Brett Okamoto alongside the UFC's #1 flyweight contender, Joseph Benavidez. And I mean, I could say that over the last 6 years, you were sort of the unofficial flyweight contender.
Yes.
As of today, well, as of a few weeks ago, you are the #1 flyweight contender. You were going to get a title shot in the UFC.
Wonderful.
How does it feel? You know, it's been 6 years, and you've been winning a lot of fights. You've been right there in the rankings, but you haven't gotten the shot. What's it feel like to know that you got it now?
Yeah, 9 out of 10. I think since my last title shot, 9 wins out of 10 fights, 3 in a row, and a title shot now. It feels great, honestly. I mean, I already had a win over the champion, Cejudo, who now it's a vacant title, so he relinquished it without a fight, going back down. And honestly, it just feels great when things like work out. You know, you try to do all this stuff, but I'm a big believer in you don't deserve anything, you know, in life. And this sport teaches you that real quick too, that you don't like deserve what you get or anything like that just because, you know. So when it happened, it was like, oh wow, like that was kind of like the right thing to happen. And honestly, the process was really great with the company and everything. You know, I was expecting something a little harder, and it worked out good. Obviously, it was a long time since my last fight in June to work everything out, but once we got the ball rolling, couldn't have been easier. The support I got like after announcing everything was like so cool. And yeah, now it's just waiting until the 29th to make it happen.
I've asked you just, you know, sporadically over the last 6 years, but how did you not get jaded at the process of winning these fights and then not getting the shot just because you happened to lose a fight with one punch, you know, against Demetrius Johnson? Were you jaded? And if you weren't, how did you avoid it?
No, you do, but you go through phases and you persevere, you know, through it. I mean, there was times, there's been a million times. I mean, even between that, I had an 18-month layoff. I had an ACL surgery. You know, it's hard not to lose, you know, some faith, some desire, a lot of things, but it always comes back. And I don't know, that's what it's all about, like the journey and the moments and the stuff that like makes those wins. Like a win, you know, a title, all that is cool, but it's kind of just an extra number or like an extra line on your Wikipedia page or something. Like all the stuff in between is like immeasurable, and like that is the fight, you know what I mean? So I don't know, I think just having good people around me, my wife first and foremost, always like keeping me positive, and like that side, that personal side, like I feel good and like enough or whatever every day, so that helps a lot. And then, you know, mixing it up, getting different coaches, different training partners that you feel care about you, you just know everything's always going to be good, and you just do your best. And then getting to the realization of just like, you know, I've had to look at every single way my career could have gone, and you know, I was at peace with every single way it could have gone, because I didn't even know what was going to happen with the division and Cejudo and all that. But I could honestly say, like, no matter what would have happened, I would have, you know, been fine with it and persevered through it. And now that it just happened, it's one of those things I'm grateful for. And to me, I work very well off of gratitude, even going into a fight, going into anything. Like if I'm thankful for something, I think that is one of my biggest, like, inspirations almost, you know, when I feel grateful for something, like you want to really hold on to it. So I'm kind of like grateful for this opportunity, even though it's funny when you look at it and you're like, well, it's the right thing also. So I hope that answered the question.
No, yeah, it does seem funny to feel such gratitude for something that you probably deserved potentially even years ago. You know, the idea of you fighting Henry Cejudo, a guy that you have a win over, a history with, he's kind of ran with this cringe thing, which has been sort of fun. You know, I think the buildup would have been a little bit bigger, I think, than you fighting Deiveson Figueiredo. Was there any when did you know that Henry wasn't going to fight you, and how did you feel about his decision to vacate the belt?
I feel like I've kind of known for a while, and you know, there was a while there where I think the UFC was talking him into it, because that was the fight they wanted, because there was a clear contender at flyweight where, you know, there's like 3 or 4 kind of at bantamweight. So that was, I know, the fight they wanted to make first, but with his injury and the time off, you know, the injury played a huge part in it too. But just a double champ in general, that's always going to affect one division or the other, or both, honestly, because it has affected both, and both, you know, have kind of had to to, be stringed along a little longer than they have to. So, I don't know. I feel like I knew at first, and then it got to a point where, like, no, that's the fight we want to make. And then, but for the most part, every time I heard something from his, like, circle, like, personally, I knew he wasn't going to go back. And then we got the ball rolling. I mean, literally, the talk of me saying, like, I want to fight Figueiredo, and we think that's the fight, a lot of it happened after the Aldo Moraes fight that weekend. Next Sunday, I called the powers that be, and we're like, hey, there was big implications on that night with Faber, Jan, Aldo Moraes. Where we go now?
Yeah.
And they already really had an idea of how it was going to go. So to answer the question, I didn't know until that point, and then it got like super fast. Like on Sunday, I talked to the powers that be. On Monday, they're like, hey, we think we're going to do you and Figueiredo for a vacant. And then by like Wednesday, it was announced.
Tell us about Figueiredo. If there are fans out there who really haven't followed his career, what have you found in your study of him?
I mean, he's your like typical like scary little Brazilian man that like definitely is like intimidating and aggressive and looks like he's from the jungle and like fighting for his life to like kill you. So I've always liked that about him because I'm a fan of the division, and you want guys like that in the division. You want fans to see and be like, damn, that, we're flyweights or whatever, but you can still be like, that dude's scary. You know what I mean? And he's aggressive, and he's finishing people. He's putting people out. So I've always liked that about him. I didn't know if I was going to fight him, and he continued to do good. And, last fight, he submitted a perennial contender in Tim Elliott, who's fought everybody and fought for the belt before. He only has one loss. And like I said, I just love his style. His aggression. He's obviously, you don't get a world title shot by not being well-rounded and not truly having any weaknesses. So, I mean, for the most part, he's just a scary Brazilian dude.
There was a time back in 2011 and 2012 where, the flyweight division was getting introduced, and it was like, I think that there was a pressure on, the champion for sure, but then also flyweights to put on a show and to talk and to get out there and to represent the division really well. I mean, as you look at an opportunity now to hold that title, are you thinking about that anymore, or is this just completely for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it is, because that's been there. So what really changes, and I can't answer that because I don't know what's going to change. Just like I don't know how the fight's going to go. Same thing, like I don't know what's going to change. I mean, I know something will. Maybe I'll be on GQ or something cool like that. So I think there's differences, but I felt that since the beginning. So it might get a little like heavier, but I've always felt that because I was the first person to fight in this division. I was somewhat, the face of it when it started. And then, Demetrius obviously became the champion, but I've been the guy here since I was the very first win in this division. And however many years later, I'm still going for the title. I've gone through generations of flyweights, every, up and down of the division. So, I mean, I've kind of carried that weight the whole time. And in that regard, I felt like the champion anyway. People would say, hey, you're the best in the world at this. I'm always fighting guys lower than me. That's what a champion has to do every single time. And so, without the official title, like you always still kind of have that burden and think of yourself in that way anyway. And like I said, I always kind of had to fight the lower guys. That's people kind of, I was almost there, you know what I mean? Like they looked at the flyweight division, they looked at me. So yeah, you always kind of had that. So now it'll just be even better. Just be more widely. I'll get to more widely represent it more than anybody else.
Last question for me, and I'm trying to relate it to something like just relate it to something. And I'm thinking to myself, if I had really wanted to work for ESPN, let's say, and I really wanted to hold the ESPN mic flag and interview people on ESPN, but I was doing, they wouldn't take me for a while, and it took me 6 years, and I felt like I was doing all the right things. I was having great moments, but then they're like, all right, we'll give you a shot. One night, you can interview people for ESPN. I would be nervous. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. That's a dream of yours to be a UFC champion, and now you've been kind of held away from it for 6 years. What do you think your emotions will be like when you go into Norfolk?
Honestly, like I said, it's hard to say, but right now, I don't it's just another fight, honestly. Like really? I look at, I don't know, I've held the title at a place like that where it was do or die survival, but it was almost like I needed it for like self-approval for myself, for like this self-worth, this like validation. And now I look at it and it's just like everything I want to win it for, like I already have, you know, like people love me and they're happy with me, like mainly my wife, my family, my personal life. So like I used to look at basically the worst thing that could have happened is like when I was obsessed with the belt and I didn't win it kind of happened. So now, like I've said, I've gone through every aspect of my career possibly going, even the flyweight division leaving and me not even fighting in the UFC. And I was comfortable with all that. So to me, it's a big fight. It's another fight. And I get up for any fight. I get excited. I get, you know, happy that I get to perform. I get grateful that I get to go perform and do what I love. But as far as just like the ESPN thing or like the UFC belt or whatever, all that is just like, it's just blurred out to me now. Like I used to literally think of an item of a belt, but what is that? You know, it's going to be on your table. It's a piece of metal. It's an extra line on your Wikipedia page. Like people are going to look back at me as a fighter and they're going to know I'm good. That is just going to kind of symbolize, like what that symbolizes you're good. That symbolizes you were the best in the world that night, when like someone's going to argue anyway, oh, he was the best anyway. You know, oh, he should have won that fight, you know, the first or something like that. So it's just like an official thing where it's the moments and everything that like are exciting for me. But yeah, like, I don't know. I don't think of it like that anymore, because it used to be like this one item I would stare at and I'd like keep on my mantle and all this. And then it didn't happen. And I was like, everything was okay. So you know what? Everything's still okay. And then like, I'm just more excited for like something else. Like for me, it used to be like, I picture myself winning the belt. And I would picture like the belt around my waist and like everyone looking at me because like I'm the best. But now, like, I think of myself backstage with nobody, like hugging my wife. You know what I mean? And like that is more meaningful to me than like everybody like looking at me because like I'm the man. You know, like she's gonna love me. People backstage that support me, you know, are gonna be happy as well. And like that's kind of what's cool to me now. And it's not necessarily like this piece of metal or like anything like that. As a competitor, it's already built in you. You want to be the best. You want to be a champion. That is inspiration since day one. But since that's always the groundwork, but since then, you layer your inspirations after that and like with experience and life and everything. So yeah, that's always the foundation as a competitor. That's like going in a fight and saying, I want to beat the guy. Like, of course you do, but what, you know, there has to be something else. And for me, like that's something else. Like, of course, it's not like, hey, I don't care if I win or something. But in a sense, it's like, I don't, you know.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app, and live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.